Look at your arms for a second. You are covered in hair. So is your chest, your back, and almost every other part of your skin. But compared with a chimpanzee, that hair is so short and fine that your body looks almost naked. Somewhere in human evolution, your ancestors gave up the thick coat that most mammals depend on. And the leading explanation is surprisingly simple. Losing that coat may have helped your ancestors stay cool when moving through hot environments. But becoming nearly hairless created new problems, and solving them helped shape the human body you have today. Imagine an early member of the genus Homo moving across a hot, open landscape in Africa. The sun is high. Muscles are producing heat with every step. Food and water may be far apart. A thick coat can protect an animal from the sun, but it can also trap heat close to the body. For an animal that needs to keep moving, that becomes a serious problem. Humans evolved an unusual cooling system. Your skin contains a very large number of eccrine sweat glands. These are the glands that release watery sweat across much of your body. When that sweat evaporates, it carries heat away. This works especially well when the skin is exposed to moving air. Now add thick fur. Sweat can still be produced, but dense hair makes evaporation from the skin less efficient. That is one reason many researchers think reduced body hair and increased sweating evolved together. Your ancestors were not simply becoming naked. They were changing the way their entire body handled heat. This idea is known as the thermoregulation hypothesis, and it has strong support. But scientists cannot point to one fossil and say, this is exactly when human body hair disappeared. Hair and skin almost never fossilize. Researchers have to reconstruct the story using anatomy, physiology, genetics, climate, and comparisons with other primates. That uncertainty matters. Human hair loss was probably not one sudden event. It was likely a long evolutionary process. So why would heat become important enough to change the body? One major change was lifestyle. Later, hominins in the genus Homo increasingly used open environments and traveled longer distances. Walking upright also changed how the body interacted with the sun. A standing body presents less surface area to direct overhead sunlight than a four-legged body does. But walking and running still generate internal heat, especially in a hot climate. That creates a strange evolutionary trade. Keep the fur, and you gain insulation and protection. Lose much of it, and you make evaporative cooling more effective. For an active animal in the heat, cooling can become extremely valuable. Experiments and physiological research show why. Humans can continue sweating across large areas of the body while exercising. Instead of relying mainly on panting, your body can dump heat through the skin while you keep breathing normally. That gives humans an unusual ability to manage heat during sustained activity. This does not mean humans are the fastest runners. Far from it. Many animals can outrun you easily over short distances. The advantage is different. Human bodies are unusually good at controlling heat during prolonged movement, especially under conditions where evaporation works well. But now there is a new mystery. If losing body hair was so useful, why did your ancestors keep so much hair on the head? The answer may involve the same problem that helped reduce hair elsewhere. Your scalp sits directly under the sun. Recent experimental work using thermal models has shown that scalp hair can reduce heat gain from solar radiation. Hair on the head can act like a barrier between intense sunlight and the scalp. The research also suggests that tightly curled hair can provide especially effective protection while reducing the amount of sweating needed to keep the scalp cool. So the human pattern begins to make more sense. Less insulating hair over much of the body helps sweat evaporate. Hair remains on the scalp, where protection from direct solar heat can be useful. It is not a perfect explanation for every detail of human hair. Evolution rarely gives us one neat answer. But it shows why losing body hair did not mean losing all hair everywhere. And hair loss came with a cost. Once dense body hair was reduced, skin was exposed much more directly to ultraviolet radiation. In equatorial Africa, that exposure created powerful new pressures on the skin. Research on the evolution of human pigmentation indicates that dark, eumelanin-rich skin became an important adaptation in the human lineage, under intense ultraviolet radiation. In other words, one evolutionary change may have helped create the conditions for another. A body better at releasing heat was also a body more exposed to sunlight. Your ancestors gained cooling, but they needed protection. Dark pigmentation became part of that protection. This is one reason the evolution of human skin and the evolution of human body hair cannot be treated as completely separate stories. They were parts of a changing biological system responding to heat, sunlight, activity, and environment. There may have been other advantages to having less body hair too. One hypothesis involves parasites. Thick fur can provide places for ticks, lice, fleas, and other parasites to hide. Reduced body hair makes some parasites easier to detect and remove. Researchers have proposed that parasite pressure may have contributed to hair reduction or helped reinforce it. But this idea is harder to establish as the main cause. The strongest general explanation remains thermoregulation, while parasite reduction and other hypotheses may have played supporting roles. And there is another clue hiding in a creature humans usually try to get rid of: lice. Human head lice live in scalp hair. Body lice are closely related, but they live mainly in clothing. Genetic studies of lice have been used to estimate when regular clothing use may have become established. One study estimated that clothing lice diverged from head lice at least about 83,000 years ago, and possibly much earlier. That does not tell us when body hair first disappeared. Hair reduction almost certainly began much earlier. But it reveals something fascinating about the consequences of becoming a nearly naked primate. Once humans moved into colder environments, biology alone was not enough. Instead of evolving a thick coat again, your ancestors increasingly used culture. Animal hides, clothing, shelter, and fire could provide warmth when the environment demanded it. That is a remarkable shift. Most mammals carry their insulation everywhere. Humans learned to put insulation on and take it off. Natural selection had helped create a body that could cool itself efficiently. Culture then gave that body new ways to survive cold conditions. This combination may be one of the most important themes in human evolution. Your ancestors did not solve every environmental problem by changing their genes. Increasingly, they changed their behavior. There is still no exact date for when your ancestors became functionally hairless. Estimates depend on indirect evidence, and researchers continue to debate the timing and the relative importance of different selective pressures. Claims that human body hair disappeared at one precise moment should therefore be treated cautiously. But the broad picture is much clearer. Your ancestors came from hairy primates. Over evolutionary time, the human lineage developed much shorter and finer body hair across most of the skin, along with an extraordinary capacity for sweating. That combination made evaporative cooling more effective. Hair remained where it could still provide important benefits, especially on the scalp. Exposed skin then faced stronger pressure from ultraviolet radiation, helping shape the evolution of pigmentation. And much later, clothing allowed humans to carry artificial insulation into colder parts of the world. So the hair on your body is not simply a useless leftover, it is evidence of a compromise. Your body still grows hair, but it no longer depends on a thick coat for insulation. Instead, it depends heavily on exposed skin, sweat, pigmentation, behavior, and technology. The next time you sweat on a hot day, you're using a cooling system with roots deep in human evolution. Your ancestors did not lose their fur because hair suddenly became pointless. They lost most of its insulating function because, in the right environment, staying cool while moving may have mattered more than staying covered. And that trade helped create one of the strangest mammals on Earth, a primate that wears its insulation instead of growing it. Subscribe for a new Stick Age story every week.